So over the next few days, we're going to look at this Phil Duclos 6-cycle oddball hit and miss engine. I've had a half dozen of these, and this is the first one I've ever had that has this embossed into the flywheel. You can see. So I've not had that before. I don't know how I'd do that if I was building it, so maybe somebody can shed some light on how that came about. But anyways, this is an engine that I bought off Facebook from a gentleman who told me that it didn't run, and he didn't think it had ever been run. So it arrived this morning, and I decided to start checking it out and maybe point out a few things that you can find wrong with these engines or that you need to do to get them running. So we'll start with the fact that it is a 6-cycle. So this the points should open at the approximately top dead center on the compression stroke, but since it's a 6-cycle, people quite often tend to get this valve timing set up wrong. This one was no exception. So I've now got it set, and I don't know if you can see, my lighting isn't the best. I've now marked the gears so that I can take it apart. Just a little scratch mark on the gears so I can take it apart, put it back together without any trouble. So I've got the valve timing correct now, and I didn't have compression, so I pulled the cylinder head off to see what was going on. Cylinder head looks good. I did notice instead of a gasket they had used silicone between this cylinder and the head. I don't recommend that. I'm going to make a gasket. The sealer tends to kind of come off and get places where you don't want it, especially a little piece will get stuck under the valve seat and give you trouble, so we're going to do that. The exhaust valve where it bolts on here, also there was no gasket, so I'm going to make a gasket for that as well. I checked both the valves. You can see the intake valve does have a gasket there where it goes together. I checked the valves, took them apart. They're clean, they are seating properly, so we're okay there. Another thing that you have to do if you're going to try to start one of these for the first time is you need to do something to hold that flyball governor shut. I find that that spring they all come with is not strong enough, and the flyball governor opens before it should, and then that latches the exhaust valve out, so it's never going to run. So until you get it running, just wire that shut. So the next thing I noticed was that this is a little stiff to turn. That should turn pretty freely, and there's a tight spot in there. So I don't think it's ever been run. The bore looks clean. I think I'm just going to chuck the shaft into my lathe and run it for a while with some oil. See if I can't get that to run a little more freely without it binding up. If not, I'll pull the jug and I'll hone that cylinder just a little bit. I'm not sure what else could be making it just a little bit tight. So those are the things I'm going to do. And I did have it firing, and it would fire, but it wouldn't stay running. I think between the exhaust leaks around the gaskets and the just the fact that it's a little tight. The other thing, if any of you are familiar with these points, I've not used those points before, and I'd like to have a spare set. So if someone knows what those points are from, I would appreciate a shout out so I can order a spare set. So that's it for now. I think with just a little bit of work we'll have this up and running. So we'll finish this video in a day or two. Thank you. So the next step in this process was I removed the timing gear, and I was trying to find out why it was a little tight when it turned, and I finally determined it was in the cylinder. So I pulled the cylinder and I mic'd both the piston and the cylinder, and I found that the tolerance or the clearance was a little tight. So only had about a thousandth of an inch tolerance, so I honed the cylinder out till I had 3/1000ths, and I'm going to make the gaskets next and put it back together, see if that helps with that problem, and then we'll go from there. So I've made all the gaskets and I've put it back together. Also, there were screws right there with the Allen head screws, and they were impossible to get out. So while I had it apart, I made studs for that, and I found the nuts wouldn't go on because they were hitting the outside of the cylinder. So I milled this flat in here at all 4 studs, and now the nuts go on, and that'll make it much easier to take off in the future. I think that we are ready to go back out to the shop and hook an ignition to it and give it a try.